circle, like, what are we doing? What's going on? Well, the great thing about our community this semester is that we actually have the possibility to all gather on the stage together and have a conversation and do some workshop-related, demonstration-related things on performance etiquette, and then also talk about practicing, which all of you are doing now that we're back in the semester and preparing for this, this journey towards juries and the rest of your life as musicians. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping things. You will find this on your Canvas page, but I just, every semester, every year, it's important that we, yes, Ingrid, Dr. Burrell will find a chair for you, that we talk about and understand the importance of, and it's all up here, of paying attention to your hearing health. Yeah, as musicians, we are often put in positions where we are potentially damaging our hearing simply by what we do as musicians. Yeah, so this is just a little bit of a window into protecting your hearing. It's something we've gone over in the past. It's something that you always can reference. I highly recommend that you read it through, that you talk to anyone that you feel might have concerns about your hearing. There are resources or ways to protect your hearing into your future. There are a lot of options. Yeah, Ingrid, if you want to sit, technically we're kind of students and. So just if we look very, very quickly, thank you, and Kobe, there is a seat for you here. If we look very quickly, you can kind of see, you know, what are some of the dangerous volume levels, right, that we can experience. So, I mean, I don't know how many of you vacuum for 8 hours a day. If you have a toddler like I do, you do spend a lot of time vacuuming, but I wouldn't put it at 8 hours right now. But, you know, things like hair dryers, you know, how loud do you play your music in a small space, listening to it, or in your head, or into your headphones? So these are the kinds of things that we want to be thinking about, that we have to pay attention to protect ourselves as we move through our lives as musicians. In the past, we've had a really wonderful doctor come and speak to us, and I put the information on about her practice. It's called Alabama Hearing Associates, and her name is Dr. Susan Sheedy. I know that we have had faculty members who have gone to see her, and she is a very kind and caring person and a wonderful resource. So if that's something that you are interested in pursuing, please reach out to Alabama Hearing Associates. Or, of course, ask, you know, typically it's ask our chair if you have any further questions, and that would be Dr. Burrell. So please
what
feel
am I
free.
supposed to know that I don't know? Everything? Okay. Check.
Yes. We direct everything to our dear chair, Dr. Burrell. Yes. Okay, and so that will be up on Canvas for you to reference as needed. So, concert attendance. We have 8 concerts that we are required to attend. 4 of them you can be in. We are also going to start momentum towards a little friendly competition on who can go to the most concerts. Keith, please come down. We have a chair for you. There's a chair right here or there. I'll need one eventually, but that's okay. So here is a little example of how you are going to submit your concert attendance. Yeah? So you see on this side you've got Mariah Pfister. Some of you have attended her recital. Mariah Pfister. There's the title page of her recital. I took a lovely picture of Mariah during that recital, and it was during the song Hotel by Francis Poulenc. So these are the 3 things that you need. Please make it, you could take a little video and put it up. You could take a lovely photo. Have fun. Take a selfie on stage. You know, like when it's your concert. You know, enjoy the process of showing your concert attendance. Okay. So just to review what's coming up, we have got next week. We have a presentation that I'm very much looking forward to by our new wind ensemble director, Dr. Jack Hans. I'm just going to read you. I personally am a huge fan of the composer that he is going to talk about. So Dr. Hans's presentation will be Lily Boulanger and the transcription of Dans Matin de Printemps et Dans Soir Triste for wind ensemble. Okay, so we will look forward to hearing all about that research from Dr. Hans next week. Thank you. Then moving forward, so on September 7th, we will have our studio class breakouts. So instrumentalists will go to the Bevel Center because that's where some of your instruments are, and that's where we are. We have a new stronghold at the Bevel Center, and then piano will be in here in the concert hall, and voice will be in the choir room. So please prepare to perform in your studio class. It's a wonderful, more informal way of presenting the work that you're doing in your applied lessons. The following week, we will have this open studio class. So again, we will be just like this right here to have a studio class of a variety of performers, instrumentalists, vocalists, and pianists, hopefully, okay? And then, yes, so, and then we will keep moving on. So, we're going to do have a little bit of a discussion on practicing. I wrote practice makes progress because really anytime we walk into the practice room to practice, we are making progress because we are committing to taking that next step in the process. I thought that your faculty might have some words of wisdom to share. I also invite you all to share as you feel compelled, things that have worked for you, and let's just talk through a little bit of what our practicing looks like in our various areas, okay? So the first question that we will start with is, what does a typical day in the practice room look like? So I will invite any faculty member in any area to start us, because I think it looks really quite different when you look at the different areas. Dr. Carey.
What I found the most effective strategy was laying out all of the musical obligations that I have to practice. So like not just going in to work on my solo rep or just going to work on my ensemble rep or my musicianship, but you're also supposed to practice for that course in the practice room. And so lay all that stuff out and switch between tasks during my practice time to keep myself engaged, and also you can only practice starting something one time. Then you're just repeating, and the thing we have to do on stage is come out and be right the first time. And so practicing multiple areas like musicianship, ensemble repertoire, solo repertoire, technique, even just memorization and study work on for all the other aspects of your musical education. Switching between those activities in a deliberate way can really help you get good, especially for your sight reading, because you've only sight read one time, right? And then you're just practicing that melody. So do it one time, move on to something else, come back, sight read something else later.
Thank you. Other thoughts? My faculty. Yes?
If I could just weigh in real quickly. Before I was a conductor, I was a clarinet player, and I'll speak to that practicing a little bit more because I think it's probably the most applicable for most of you right now. Whatever you play or whatever your practicing looks like, I found it really helpful to invest time in a process up front in my practice. I always found that it was more helpful I wanted a fishing rod, not just a fish, right? So I always took time, no matter what I was doing, no matter what I had to prepare, to invest in my fundamentals, right? Going through technical exercises, scales, long tones, because everything that you invest, every minute of time that you invest in something like that saves you tenfold the amount of time further down the road. All right, so that investment in future endeavors by really working on your technical fundamentals, your tone fundamentals, your musical fundamentals, was something that takes time, but I think saves you time in the long run. The other thing that I would really try to make a hallmark of my practicing is I try to come up with a system of how to attack and how to practice different things. So whenever I had a new piece of music, whenever I had a new etude, whenever I had a new solo, whatever it was, a piece for band, I had a method to go about kind of dismantling and attacking some of that music. And for me, it was very scientific and it was very repeatable. But what that did was that created structure that allowed me to be successful within that context. So if I had a passage that was difficult, a string of multiple 16th notes, multiple measures of 16th notes at a time, I always had a method. I would do 4 notes at a time. 4 notes, then the next, and this is at a slow tempo that I could attack. 4 notes, the next 4 notes, the next 4 notes, so on and so forth. And I forced myself to do that perfectly 3 times in a row. If I messed up, I had to go back and start over again. Then I would do 8 notes. Once I had mastered 8 notes, I would do 16 notes at a time. And that was at one tempo. Once I'd done that, I would bump it up 4 clicks. You don't have to do exactly that, but that was my structure, and that was my method. And so, while I was learning new music, I was also really comfortable with the method in which I learned that new music. And that framework allowed me to be successful, I think. So, whatever your routine and regimen looks like, if I could stress 2 things to you, it would be A, invest in your future by doing things that may not pay off right at that very moment. Work on your fundamentals. Spend time doing that. It will save you time in the long run. And then B, come up with some sort of structure that is repeatable, regardless of whatever you're practicing, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you sit down with a new piece of music. I think the more that you can be familiar with what you're doing, the less intimidating practice and attacking a new piece seems, more manageable it is, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Dr. Hans.
I guess I might just reinforce the idea of being very methodical with your practice time, like Hans was just describing, but also the idea of just keeping yourself mentally engaged, and that's a way of doing it. But I guess I'll just point out that sometimes we want to start at the beginning of the piece and play it through, right? And we just end up reinforcing our mistakes, the things that we're doing incorrectly. So just we want to avoid that by being methodical, one phrase at a time, that sort of thing.
Maybe we'll have a couple of other answers to this question, then we'll move on.
Sure. I would say that I love all those ideas. One thing is, all of you are very busy. Anyone who's not busy? Right? We all feel very overwhelmed and busy. And research actually shows that we can't really pay attention for more than 25 minutes sitting there. And so it is a waste of time to just sit there. Those who study with Laurie know that the first assignment and the first lesson is to actually write out a schedule to do 25 minutes block of time, because all the historic research shows that we can't function more than 25 minutes focusing on one thing, and there's no point. And I think being honest with how much you can practice on one thing really matters, because, for example, they were saying, like, Dr. Carey was saying, laying out all these things, right? Some of you may be really good at touching 5 different things in 25 minutes. Some of you might be better to do one thing 15 minutes at a time. Go get water, have coffee, a sip, go back in. We can't know which one of you are those. And you can say you're one, but you really don't know until you really try it and ask yourself very honestly, like, am I bored with this? Am I really being productive? I think the efficiency of practice is more important than the quantifying time of practicing. Many students would say, oh, I practiced 3 hours, but I think even just playing for peers will show whether that 3 hours is worth it, or you can go play video games or sleep or hang out and do something else and just go to the practice room for 15 minutes. And then another thing I think is the vision. Like once you figure out your time limit on each thing, whether it's scales, whether it's technical exercise or repertoire, then another question, especially for keyboard repertoire that has hundreds of measures at a time, and one piece can cost you 30 minutes, and I just said, research shows that you can do more than 25 minutes, is to actually quantify how many measures do you need to tackle for that week. If you have 4 pieces, literally count out how many measures. If you don't know how many measures there is in your piece, we got a problem here. Then we only got 14 weeks really. And if there are 500 measures in total, then you better like divide it, and you're hoping that equally efficient every week you can tackle that many measures, but it's also not. You guys are very like calm and on time today, including faculty. I guarantee you by week 10 we'll have more late comers. Of course, you know, stress level is higher, cortisol level is higher. So those are things that we need to consider when you are actually calculating how many measures you can tackle per day, and because by week 10 your other obligations or other courses are going to somehow make you feel like music is not important, and then you barely make it to the practice room that typical day, and then you're so tired that we'll see you all together in the lobby, and that's your practice because checking in with friends, right? Mental health is important. And then practice room are all gone, right? I'm seeing all these are real life scenarios. So they gave you all the scientific things, but I want to add on that, like, you know, really, really looking at a vision of 15 weeks, like how are you functioning each week? And how much time can you spare on each piece? And is that realistic that you think you can handle 500 measures in 1 week?
One little simple tip that I would add, just my own frustration of making the same mistake over and over and over and over. And I see it with students. You're playing a piece, you hit a wrong note. What do you normally do immediately after that? You probably go the correct note. It's a common thing to do because you want to hit the right note. When you do that, you just taught yourself to hit the wrong note first. So you always have to go back to just before the error and play the correct note to the correct note. And the longer you let that go, the harder it is to correct. So I would just recommend, as soon as you have an issue, look at it and see what happened.
Thank you all for your thoughts. We have a couple other questions we can continue to add as we feel comfortable. So the next question is, how do you balance technical development exercise with repertoire learning and memorization? Does this change depending on where you are in the semester or in your degree program? Anyone want to take that and run with it?
Dr. Oster, I think you'd be really good at shining light on it too, to start, because vocalists, I think we see really clear differences.
Yeah, well, you know, and actually Dr. Carey and I have conversations a lot about, you know, the balance between, you know, as singers, how much vocal exercises should we do? I'm actually in the process of, we were implementing a new plan in my studio this semester where I'm asking students to come up with a plan of 5 20 to 30 minute practice times per week, but that the focus is on vocal exercises, yeah? So that you're going into the practice room with goals in mind of, I am going to do these 3 vocalises that we did in our lesson this week, and the idea is that through practicing the similar technical exercises kind of on a daily, weekly basis, that we grow in our understanding of our technique through that process. And then the other thing that I think about singers that's a bit different than other instrumentalists is that there is so much time that we can spend and need to spend on learning our repertoire that's outside of the practice room. That's working on the text, that's
speaking the text in rhythm, because we as singers, we get the text, we get, understanding the poem, understanding the translation of the poem, being able to express the translation of the poem when we're singing in that foreign language, being able to pronounce the foreign language. So I think for me, from the singing perspective, I try to focus really heavily with students on building vocal technique for the first half of the semester. And then the second half of the semester is kind of vocal technique sprinkled in, but really a letting go and a trusting of that technique so that you can focus on the interpretation. So, but it's a very fine line, a delicate balance, because we can never just stop doing our vocal exercises, right? And I'm really curious to hear this perspective from other instrumentalists and pianists, because I do think it's potentially quite different, or maybe it's not as different as I think.
I just want to amplify something that Dr. Hunt said. You don't go into a practice room to get a fish. You go into the practice room to build a fishing rod. And that you go into the practice room to build your instrument. And that is very literal for the vocalist. You are going in to build that instrument. So I would say half of the time I spent as undergrad practicing was spent on technique, and the other half on repertoire. Because that's where you get better. Songs don't make you get better. That is the technique and the deliberate, and making sure that you're efficient as a vocalist with how much you're singing, so that you're singing very deliberately in the practice room, so you're not wearing out the muscles being sloppy. And lots and lots of silent practice for singers, yeah.
Well, and the other thing too, I had a question come up in my studio, and it was a great question. It said, so on the days that I have choir, do I still have to go into the practice room and practice and do my vocal exercises? And I said, yeah, actually, yes. But that, I do believe that, but also you can grow your vocal technique by paying attention to the vocal exercises that you're doing in your warm-ups with Dr. Carey in choir, that it's possible. And I wonder if there's that parallel in wind ensemble, for instance, are there opportunities within the rehearsal to spend time focusing on kind of a technical element, so that we can hopefully, that maybe there are days that we don't have time to practice, right? That there are simply days but we can say, okay, well, I'm really going to focus on, for singers, lifting my soft palate and inner smiling when I'm singing my vocal exercise in choir, or singing the repertoire in choir. So, other thoughts? Yes, Erin.
I was just gonna say, with me and Kate being the only percussionists, I was just thinking, with my technical stuff, is that I try to learn a new technique within percussion every kind of semester or piece, because I worked a lot on mallet technique last year, and then started going into the Tiffany technique and trying to learn kind of every little technique, even with as simple as I learned my senior year of high school triangle technique, how you're probably supposed to play a triangle, and that within percussion, you can learn so many different techniques just within all the different instruments that we have, and just that's a big part of being a percussionist, is knowing all those little techniques of every instrument, and that I just try to learn all of them as best I can.
Other thoughts from our students or our faculty on this topic?
Yes, I can speak. So I am currently done with my lessons, but with how it changed over the progress is at the beginning you get your piece, and you're immediately focusing on the main technique. But as it goes on throughout the term, you start to focus on more stylistic elements and basically piecing all that together. And that's kind of just been, I think, even though I had been playing a long time before I even came to college, right? But I think a big change for me, at least personally, was getting away from the very stylistic play or the very technical playing, because I could do a lot of that stuff, but basically the expression through your instrument, and this I think also applies to voice too, is being able to just convey that a lot better. And I feel like a lot of people in high school, middle school never really learned that as well, because they were mostly just learning on playing the instrument and the notes. But once you get to that, especially as I got into the senior year, that is what I've been focusing on the most.
my time ends up being focused on what fire needs to be put out when. You know, I've got these, when I don't have anything going on, I like to, you know, divide it up into technical and repertoire. But, see, I have a thing with, Gabe and Joanna, a house concert at Fret Shop that's violin and, you know, electric guitar and classical. So I have certain pieces I have with them, so those are gonna have to be back into the system to get currently I'm trying to record a tremolo piece, focusing on that technique, a lot of really wonderful, fun, slow metronome practice, which is your, so, you know, I have it depends on what you have coming up, you know, sometimes. If you're under the gun, you have to focus on that, but you still need to, you know, be aware of your technique and what your limitations are. Even if, and I like the idea of breaking it into smaller parts, because my brain shuts down after about 20 minutes, you know, or maybe sometimes 15, but I try to, you know, at least keep it all focused on what has to be done. So there's, I guess, the ultimate practice time when I'm on my own, nothing's over my head, and then there's like, oh God, this is next week, you know, I have to get, let's say, 3 hours of stuff ready for the, you know, Providence Street Wine Shop or the Museum of Art, whatever is, you know, imminently over your head. But you do want to prepare for it in advance. Don't wait the day before juries to focus yourself.
I think that's in line with what Dr. Ng was saying too, that this is the perfect time in the semester for you to be very ambitious in your organization of your practice time, right? Because, you know, we think we have all the time, and then we're like, look at the calendar, and it's like, oh, my juries are coming up soon. And also, you know, that's the wonderful thing about, you know, we have these performance opportunities in this setting, right? So say you have, you know, for singers at the freshman and sophomore level, we practice 4 pieces, right? Or we sing 4 pieces at the jury. And so if you know that you have to sing in that studio class and that student recital and that, you know, it motivates you to be organized about how we're learning our rep, so that you don't get to the end of the semester and you haven't performed any of it and it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to perform all my jury pieces next week, right? So it's kind of that thinking ahead and putting yourself in the hot seat as a performer multiple times before you have to walk out onto the stage or wherever you do your juries to perform your jury pieces. Yes?
I would just like to say, so I'm a senior. Any freshman or sophomore, you may be thinking of technique is just like all your scales and everything like that, but I find that often when I'm learning new pieces, that enlightens me on new techniques that I can learn to learn that piece. So it's something that I've never had to do before, something I've never thought of, and it may not be anything scalar or chordal at all. It may just be like, oh, I need to move my fingers in this certain way or jump this certain way that I've never done before, and there usually is some kind of exercise to do for that, but you don't always have to just be working on the same, because when I started as a freshman, like the just normal technique, doing your scales, it felt so repetitive and so boring, and knowing that the next 4 years, like, yes, you will be working on that, but that's not all the technique and all the exercises that you're going to be doing. Every time you learn a new piece, you'll be learning some new technique to experiment with.
Thank you. A couple more questions. Okay. So, for those studying conducting and or composition, how did your study of conducting and composition inform your practice on your primary instrument, or vice versa? We've got composers and conductors in the room.
Vice versa is the important part, right?
Yes.
So when we first study conducting, study it like a new instrument. Like you're learning the techniques of a new instrument. So that I think was really important for me, for approaching it like as an, oh, well, this is my new instrument, this whole language and grammar of conducting. Then I would say that conducting can inform your practice time, and that I I don't practice repertoire. I teach myself repertoire in a practice room. I go practice technique to continue to develop my instrument or whatever, but when I'm learning repertoire, now I teach it to myself like I'm a conductor. And I learn it faster that way. It takes the emotional part away of being frustrated about how I'm screwing it up when I'm singing it, right? Because I'm like, well, what would I do? How would I help a student learn this? and approaching it that way.
Hmm. Other thoughts?
I'll piggyback off of that just a little bit. You know, I don't feel nearly as competent a conductor as I did a clarinet player, because of what Dr. Carey said. It's you're learning a new instrument. You know, I haven't been conducting for as long as I was playing clarinet prior to taking up conducting seriously. But it's very similar to how you practice your instruments and build your technical facility. I really try to separate my practicing of conducting. So you have technical exercises as a conductor that you can do to gain hand independence, to work on the effectiveness of cueing and gesture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I try to do that stuff somewhat separately from the music that I'm studying. I don't like to sit there and conduct through my scores without an ensemble, because then what I'm doing is just choreographed. And I don't like for my conducting to be choreographed. I want it to be responsive and in the moment based on what I'm hearing. So I don't like conducting things. But you still need to build that technical skill and facility. So I'll do those exercises and drills, maybe with a metronome, but not in the context of the music that I'm studying, if that makes sense. I'm building that technical foundation. I'm building my toolbox up so that when I'm in rehearsal and I need a certain physical tool, I can go into the toolbox and grab that skill out, which is not dissimilar from how I went about practicing when I was playing clarinet, if that makes sense. Learning the music and whatever score that we're working on, that happens outside of the physical apparatus. That's knowledge-based. That's about how I can take the score and internalize it. But that has, at least for me in the very beginning of the process, that's separate from my physical apparatus.
Other thoughts?
Chris, you brought up composition also. I think as an improvising player myself, when I compose something or arrange, for whatever size ensemble, I'm developing ideas very methodically, purposefully, which you don't really have that opportunity if you're improvising to be that purposeful, right? You got to come up with an idea. But I believe that process of composing or arranging enhances my playing, because I can recall this cool idea that I really thought of, when I had a stretch of time to really think about it and come up with something cool. So I'm not sure I really addressed an important issue, but.
No, but so I was actually, one of the things that we didn't really cover in the kind of what does your typical time in a practice room look like is kind of what does your time as a jazz musician like in a practice room look like in terms of technique, and I think that, so can I just make sure I understand what you were saying, that that your work improvising kind of then informs what you then put on paper when you're notating music? Is
I
that
think it's a two-way street.
kind of?
I guess I was more emphasizing the writing technique, coming up with ideas there that can manifest in the improvisation as well.
I also imagine, like, I know, obviously, I know Dr. Bell is a violinist, right? And a composer. And, if you're a pianist and a composer, how does your primary instrument, factor into kind of the choices you make as a composer or what you gravitate towards as a composer? Would you say that shifts being a pianist versus being a violinist?
I think so. I think I can typically tell if the pianist wrote the piece. Mostly because, there's advantages and disadvantages. The piano is, you can do everything, right? I'm not used to doing everything myself, so I have to rely on others and to make those things happen. Whereas when I hear a piano composer, a lot of times I hear the piano doing everything and then they add other things with it, right? So it's a difference in writing style. I can usually tell if the composer's a percussionist as well, because percussionists have rudiments and certain grooves they feel. So usually the music grooves a lot more. That's not something that I do a lot of, right? My writing is probably more oriented around, traditional string music, right? Because that's what I know. So very lyrical, right? A lot of counterpoint, a lot of interweaving of various parts, right? Because I'm used to doing that and hearing it. I'm playing in chamber music. But I think with percussionists, the music usually has some sort of like catchy thing. When I think of like David Lang, right? Or like Andy Akiho, it's usually something right away that grabs your attention, and they do it for a while. It could be a minimalist piece, or it could not be. But either way, it's gonna groove. So that's different. Pianists, I think it's usually a lot fuller. Usually, especially if there's piano happening. I've seen this a lot too. This is fun. Where a pianist will write for a full ensemble, but then they'll play with it, and they're playing everything with the piano. I never understood that. I always thought it was kind of a waste of an ensemble, but I've seen it. And so I think that there are lots of tendencies, depending on your instrument, you'll have to try to overcome and avoid. My own writing style and whatnot, means that I'm probably not as effective of a piano writer too. So there are lots of drawbacks as well, and certainly ways that you approach other mediums is certainly allows you to have some unique expression, but also I think maybe presents some challenges as well. Right? So years ago, Dr. Carey and I did a piece together, and so a lot of these counterpoint lines and whatnot that I enjoy in string writing, I did with the choir. It made it a lot more challenging for the choir to perform, but they worked really hard at that, and I think together we had a really unique experience that was really fun, but certainly challenged everybody in a lot of different ways, right? So it's not to say it's all bad or it's all good, it's just very different, and it allows for, I think, some unique opportunities. I think for me, when I'm writing, it's a lot of patterns and trying to figure out how on my instrument, the things that I practice or that I know other people practice, right, by studying piano etudes or studying, how vocalists prepare repertoire, right, and trying to tap into that as much as I can as a composer to write those patterns to achieve the effects that I want is important. I also play in a new music ensemble where we tour all over, and my specialty mostly is to play new music. So you might think that I exclusively practice new music. Actually, I don't. Mostly I practice Bach, and I practice scales and arpeggios and technical things so that I can recognize the patterns. And I think my composing allows me, as Keith was saying, kind of to think about what the effect is in the context. So thinking a little bit more of what the composer is trying to achieve, and then allowing myself to understand that and use the technical facility that I've established to achieve that in ways that maybe, depending on who the composer is and what their areas are, they were able to achieve successfully in the music, or maybe less successfully, but I can help as a performer, right? And so that's probably why I get asked to do a lot of new music, because I have a good ability to merge those things a little bit. But I think it's also a very fun thing to be conscious of too, of you can use these other areas of being a conductor, being a composer to enhance your musicianship and to enhance your own ability to perform music effectively in your own medium.
I have something, I'm gonna make it short. So when we did the transposition, does anyone remember that we used to do like transcription projects for musicianship skills? So when the song I chose was Hillary's song, and it is so hard. I find it like most hard to like transcribe all the double stuff she does. So after Kat showed that feature playing it doing it in half speed on YouTube, I was like, wow, I did not know that feature until Kat showed it.
Yeah, and that's a great point there, Michelle, of where does that transcription project comes from? It actually comes from the jazz tradition, because when they want to play solos, those are not written out, right? They have to listen to the records, and the records themselves are the sheet music in some ways. And so what are they doing? They're spending that time to hear every subtle nuance into every little tone and every rhythm, right? And so that in itself, that study increases the musicianship, something in classical world we don't do a whole lot of, right? So why do we do that with the music that we love? Because we can see that jazzers are really great improvisers, right? Understand patterns really well, have incredible ears, and so we can learn from a tradition that maybe we, as classical performers, don't know that much about, and be able to adapt that. And I see jazzers in particular do that a lot with classical music, of seeing how they can incorporate things that they're not necessarily as comfortable with that we do into their own playing. So that's one thing I've always really admired about jazz musicians, is that they're very adaptive and very flexible, and very eager to learn new things and put themselves out there in ways that maybe as classical musicians we don't as much. And not everybody. I mean, percussionists are pretty adventurous, but somebody like me who plays violin on a very stuffy instrument, we just don't, right? So we have our way of doing things, and that's it. So I've always admired that about jazz musicians and their ability to take risks and to try new things to enhance their musicianship.
Practice listening. The way that y'all practice listening is something that we should take a page out of that book, for sure.
So I want to make sure that we leave time for our final segment, which is more audience participatory. But I want to ask one faculty member to say what is one piece of advice about practicing you would give to your college self. Don't all jump for it at once, but one piece of advice for your college self.
Do more of it.
Practice more. Okay, great. That was so succinct. Okay, everyone stand up. We're gonna just stretch. That was wonderful. Do more. You can always do more. So, we are going to, sorry, I know we don't have a ton of space. One of the things that I think is, can be, I don't know, we can talk about this, whether or not we actually feel this to be true, but the way that we present ourselves as performers is so important, right? That performance etiquette. And it's a little bit different depending on what instrument we play, what, singer versus pianist versus instrumentalist, but we're going to look at a couple of examples of presenting ourselves for performance. But first, let's just, everyone just take a little space, and we're just gonna stretch. Everyone stretch. Yeah, because we were sitting for a long time. And then everyone just do a little, this is my favorite, let's energize in their place. I like to pretend I was a football player in a past life. I have no idea if football players do that? Okay. Yeah, so I know we don't have room to do the whole thing. So we have a volunteer, a singer volunteer, and a pianist volunteer for today. 2 examples of walking out on stage, and bowing, and introducing themselves. So, Catherine is going to be our pianist, right? And Anthony's going to be our singer. So you can duke it out. Who wants to go first? We're going to pretend that, it's a little bit strange, but obviously, the audience is there. I'm going to move this. We are the audience. So actually, it's a good opportunity to practice So say this is our opening studio class all together, and we have to introduce ourselves to this. Oh, sorry, we can all sit down. That's really intimidating if we're all standing up like, perform for me, please, you know. Okay, and so then I'm gonna come stand over here. So back here.
Catherine, you prepared to go first? Okay. Are you? Or Anthony? Who decided? Who's going first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Who's on first? Okay. Anthony. And we're gonna clap, right?
Today I will be performing for you, insert name of piece here, by insert name of composer here. And then I would just start singing. After I'm ready, give the pianist a look, and make sure I'm really totally focused in the piece before starting. I will not come out here like, hey guys, what's up, Julia? But just calming yourself and really focusing in on what you want to do, what you want to convey with the piece, what you want to express to your audience. Yes, you can lose yourself in the applause a little bit. Enjoy the experience, but stay rooted in your mission, what you're here to do, what you're trying to convey. Make it professional, because a performance is something that you've been working on your entire semester towards. It's not something you should take lightly, anyone else should take lightly. Yes, it's going to be very nervous, very nerve-wracking, probably not fun backstage, but once you get out here, leave it all back there, because you know what you've been practicing. You know that you are going to do great. And all these people here, I've been with about a third of them for the past 2 years. And I know no one in the music department is judgmental, gonna get on your case. They're just here to help you and support you. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
Thank you. We're not.
Oh no.
Yes,
Do I have
good.
to-
So Anthony has brought up so many wonderful points and demonstrated so many things nicely. I think it's so important that we enjoy. I know it's hard, right? We all get nervous, but like, you have the opportunity to perform beautiful music, to bring to life, you know, the music and the text and all of the things. So that's great. I think it's really important that I want you to try it one more time. I'm going to go try it one more time. And I want you to say, actually not even the introduction, just the walk. We're gonna clap. Smile. They're applauding, right? They're applauding. You're walking out. Oh my gosh, of course. I am so grateful to be able to perform for you, right? Gratitude is so important as a performer. They're so excited that you're gonna perform. Yeah? One more time. And walk fast. I'm sorry about the walking fast thing for singers. We're gonna walk fast. But first, please. Your insert text.
We probably shouldn't wait so long before we bows. I mean, it's like you're looking at everybody and thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna bow. You need to bow right away.
Yeah, and I think that timing can be challenging, right? Because you want to like acknowledge, but it's also like, okay, you're all clapping for me. But yeah, I think it's that feeling of, you know, I'm sorry, you stand right there, Anthony. So you're all gonna clap for me, right? You're gonna clap for me. And as soon as I get to my just get really tired of watching you walk onto stage and you're not clapping by the time I get out on stage, I would say don't take a huge bow, just like nod your head or, that sense of like, we want to try to be in relationship with the audience and hopefully your audience will like stick with it and clap for the whole time and then you get to your spot and you bow. So, thank you so much, Anthony, for
All right, next we have a solo pianist. Let's give her a round of applause.
Hi, I'm Kevin Hargrave, and I'll be performing 433 by John Cage. So if you're performing a piano piece or not playing anything as in this case, you definitely want to make sure the bench is pulled out to the right amount. How I normally check the height of the bench is I use my knee to determine if it's going up or down because you never really know with these things. So you always make sure to take all the time you need to set the bench to the right height because your comfort and performance really is like critical to executing the piece. So you check the bench height. Definitely, this will be like a stagehand or stage manager's job to help you, but make sure the piano is set up correctly. The lid's full stick, half stick. If you're accompanying half stick, if you're performing full stick. Make sure the piano is open, obviously, and I don't start immediately when I sit down, but I take a breath, try to ground myself, center myself, get the audience prepared, sort of bring the audience into that moment with you, and then start. But don't wait too long, otherwise it'll seem like you're nervous and not really sure what you're doing. And that's pretty much it. That's all the advice I have.
Ms. Hargrave, can you demonstrate to us two different outcomes? One is that you completely miss 2 pages of the piece and play a C major chord at the end, and how you bow, and one is that you totally nail the whole composition and how you bow. Can you demonstrate both? So pretend you play, and then you totally miss the 2 pages. Where that happens certainly to me. Can you still end on a C major chord? Right? And we all know something happened, right? But let's clap. Second is Hargrave. Let's say that you totally just want to go mad in the climber. So should there be a difference between A and B? That's a great answer, thank you. It is because, and thank you for being a great model for the pianist. The reason I want to add that is I think Dr. Osu can demonstrate a lot with great Anthony being a role model on that, but let's not forget part of the process of the performance is not done until you disappear from everybody's eyes. It's not actually ending on the last note. Particular pianists that get drawn so much about how you lift your hand, because walking in and out of stage to your instrument, whether you're vocalist or instruments yourself or any percussionist with 5 different instruments on stage at one time, it is like a dance, right? How you walk, how you march out and in, no different than a marching band on a football field, no different than a ballet, no different than ballroom dancer, any kind of representation. It is an art form on here. All of you are here as a music majors or minors. That means secretly or admittedly, you love playing music. And so don't shy away from that performance, even if you don't think you make it to the best of your ability. Right? How you end is actually part of performance, right? And that's why I mentioned that. If she will get 2 pages, do you still want to support a person who give it the best and make it the last note instead of quit in the middle of the performance, right? It's much more satisfying to see somebody finish a performance. And so it is a 2-way street. If the performer, can you give a very devastating look? Like, sit back on there and just like so depressed of that 2 pages and so judgmental on yourself. And give a C major chord at the end. We have seen that. We have seen that, right? We have seen our students, we have seen previous ourselves.
like, be grateful. I think one thing is, we tend to forget about is everything is so given to us, everything is so fast-paced. It is actually privilege of how much we all, both teachers and students, are given an opportunity to be on stage in this beautiful place. If you were in, say, New York, London, Hong Kong, you will rent $300 just to be in here for 30 minutes. Am I right? I mean, we all come from somewhere that have those astronomical costs to just be on stage. So this doesn't matter how well you play. All of those, the moment you are behind the stage door, is already predetermined by your practice time, right? But what is not predetermined is how have you practiced visualizing how you walk out on stage, how you play, and how you quit the stage in the most elegant, professional way. Because the moment you're on, it doesn't matter whether you have no sleep. You gotta make yourself look like a star, or else why are you here on stage, right? If you don't love music so much, you would not be sitting here. That is the most honest thing you can do for yourself, is be the star, and then everything will come through. Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Osigo, what about my clothes?
What about your clothes?
Yes, is this fine for a performance?
Yeah, so, you know, dress nicely for performance, right? I mean, even for studio class. I mean, when I was in my doctorate, like, I dressed up for my lessons, right? I wore nice clothes so I could walk into my lesson. And actually, with my teacher, if I were performing one of my pieces in my lessons and I didn't give a full performance of it, I mean, she was very old school and a little bit hardcore, but she was, was that your best performance of that piece? You know, and so I'm not saying, I don't necessarily agree that that has to be the lesson atmosphere, but, you know, this atmosphere, you know, wear a nice pair of pants. I mean, wear nice shoes, wear a dress, wear a skirt, wear dress pants, whatever makes you feel comfortable and confident, and that's a little bit more on the formal side. Yes.
I want to add onto that. That's no different than actually practicing. How do you expect to be rolling out on PJs every day in a practice room and in your lesson, and then suddenly you can be in a suit or a dress gown? I mean, just talk about this comfort of shoes for both genders, right? This comfort of clothes, all this like jacket and dresses and all that. And so just tagging on that, I think we would love if you all dress up every day, coming to lessons, but part of, I think, the preparing for the performance process is, first of all, it's like, can you fit in the clothes that you think you can fit in and play comfortably? Whether it's singer, right? Like, have any of you singers felt like sometimes you wear too tight clothes that you couldn't?
Or shoes that you can't walk in. Walk in your shoes, right?
Yep.
So that you know that, you know, if you're wearing, I mean, I can't wear heels, but like if one of my very dearest students, I watched them limp out on stage in their heels, right? Because they were wearing the highest heels and they were, you know, like literally like, okay, I'm here, you know? So because we have to look comfortable, right? And so no matter, you know, what you're wearing, practice, wear it.
Your collar should be about a half an inch to an inch larger than what the tailor would measure your neck for as a singer.
Okay.
Like what you would normally wear for fashion, it needs to be bigger than that. Especially if you're going to wear a tie and practice with a tie on. Actually, for all wind players, that's true too. I would say.
Okay.
Practice with a tie on.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you all for your attention today. This has been really fun. Yes, Jonah?
So it's important to breathe.
Yeah, you'll die if you don't. Don't test that theory.
Breathing is important. Yeah. Feeling comfortable. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, faculty. Thank you, students. For this.